Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Okay, we're back, and we wanted to talk about, I'll just, let me interrupt myself here. Episodes 1 and 2 of this series, we're talking about the ridiculous drama tornado that hit my office. Not literal tornado, but, talk about dental drama. There you go. So if you have not heard those 2 episodes, I think that would be helpful, but this episode could stand alone. Mm-hmm. And how do you have a tough conversation with an employee? And what's funny to me is you're like, man, you handled that so well. We didn't have a strategy. So again, I didn't have a strategy in this. I just kind of was like, what are we going to do with this? And you and I both were like, okay, how do we want to handle this? And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you initially didn't even have me in the meeting, right? Like, wasn't it going to be you and my manager?
It was originally going to go, and so this is our conversation regarding the thief that presented herself on your team. And originally, so there's a lot of side conversations here that we won't go back and encapsulate here, but your manager and I had talked extensively because I needed to understand how this person had been dishonest. And so I needed to understand those facts. And in that conversation, she and I said, well, why don't the two of us, your manager and I, have a conversation where we just ask her some questions about this to see, what does she say? What is her response? And then by the time I was headed to your practice on Friday, I'm a planner, and so I think I was probably driving you crazy because I kept saying, oh, what's the plan? But what's the plan? How are we going to handle this meeting? And are you talking? Am I talking? I even remember before our conversation with the thief, because you were like, yeah, just go get her. And I was like, but wait a second, what? I'm going to bring her in here, and then what? You're going to say something? And you're like, I got it. I'll ask the questions. Other than that, we had no plan. And so I'm kind of like, oh, let's hope this goes well. And I just said, okay, I'm going to sit there and be quiet. You ask the questions, but I can't, because we had not decided whether she was going to be terminated. We knew that her answers in that moment would give us the answer that we needed. And so I'm like, well, how am I going to know if you're deciding to terminate? And you just kind of looked at me and I was like, well, you'll just decide. You just say in the meeting, we just won't talk about it. Like, you're just going to have to decide if the answers are what you're looking for.
Which is so counter to, because I turn to you for every decision. I'm always wavering on my decision. And I think the reason I was so clear on this is what we've already talked about in episodes 1 and 2. So I'm not going to go back and rehash that. But bottom line to me was I can't work with a person that I don't trust. And so once that trust is broken, if I'm always going to question your honesty, then I just know it's not going to be a relationship that's going to work for me. And I think, funny enough, when my manager had called me to tell me about this suspicion that they had about the thief was on a Wednesday. And again, if you go back and listen to the other 2 episodes, you'll remember that. But when she told me this, she's like, oh, associate, because she had taken it to the associate doc. So we had the other front desk person who witnessed something that thief did. She had concerns. She took it to the manager. Manager was like, ooh, that doesn't look good. I wasn't in the office. Associate's there. She goes to associate, and associate's like, ooh, yeah, that's not good. He goes, Kuba's probably going to fire her. And when she told me that, I was like, what does that mean? What am I, like this lunatic? I'm just going to fire people? How come you don't, why am I not given more credit than that? Yes, I can be dramatic, but a lot of that's for flair and for show. But inside, I hem and haw a ton. I'm the melancholy. I think through everything from multiple different angles. So the fact that, Kuba's just going to fire her, I was like, rude. I'm probably not going to fire her just because you said that, right? So anyway, so she tells me the scenario that we've already talked about in episode 2, that it looked like she was doing something shady where she was deleting an appointment, recreating it to give herself credit to get a bonus. And, I mean, as a side note, what a stupid thing to do. The bonus isn't that much. It's either going to be $5 or $10. Like, is it worth it, honey? Anywho, I guess to her it was. But I was like, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. Y'all are all jumping to the conclusion that she's being dishonest and I'm going to fire her. I will say if she is being dishonest, then yes, I will fire her. So he's right about that. But I haven't determined that she's been dishonest. So I firmly believe, and I wasn't just saying that, I truly was like, maybe she was trained wrong on this, or maybe she was confused by this, or maybe... So I was like, okay, well, let's look at it. Like, why do we think this? Why do we think that? Okay, now you're telling me this. How many different ways could I break that down? How could I get confused about that? Because if I could get confused about it, maybe she's confused about it. So, I kind of took every piece of the puzzle and kind of went like, where could be a point where this could justify her behavior? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't really see it. But I've been proven wrong so many times, and if I just listen to what she has to say, then I can...
She may redeem herself somehow.
She may redeem herself. It's a low likelihood, but I have by no means said that she's going to get fired. So even my associate's like, oh, come on, you're going to fire her. I was like, why are you saying that? So fast forward to then, I think it was either that morning or Thursday before you came, and my manager was like, I think it was that morning, Friday morning, she's like, oh, I just didn't sleep all night. I'm just so anxious. And I said, what's wrong with you? Because in my mind, I'm like, you're not dealing with the after, like, Bethany and I are going to be in these firings. We're not making you do it. Like, what is your problem? And then she said, well, because I have to ask her. And I was like, wait, why do you have to ask her? And she's like, well, Bethany and I decided that I'll be in there. I was like, oh, no. I don't need you in there. And I think we thought she needed to be there because we thought it was kind of complicated, like you and I not knowing the system exactly. We took a minute to figure out the system, but we figured it out because you and I were trying to problem solve. So we were like, okay, irrelevant, like all the details she's giving me. That's a relevant detail. That's a relevant detail. So you and I are very good at that in different ways. So it's like we had our bases covered there.
Right.
And I was like, again, if you guys go back to episodes 1 and 2, I wasn't worried about the thief one because to me, it was pretty black and white. And for me, who hems and haws over most things, this was a non-hem and haw. Mm-hmm. So I know it was a hem and haw for you after we've dialogued about it because of all the other circumstances. But for me, this was a no-brainer, mm-hmm. which is not norm for me. So to me, I was like, well, I'm going to know based off her reaction and her facial expressions and the tone in her voice and her explanation. And if I believe it and I can see that it's plausible, then we're not going to fire her. And I hope that that's where we're going to be. And so when it came down to calling her, like you said, you were anxious and you're like, what's the plan? Who's talking and who's not? And I'm like, I'll talk. Like, I got this. And I think you were still like, you never got it. I'm going to have to be, I'm sure you were like, where are you going to fall? Where am I putting the net? Because I'm thinking it's going to be in one of these 3 spots, but you could be anywhere in these 10 spots. And I don't know where I'm going to have to run. Can I get there fast enough? I see now what you were thinking, but I was a cool cucumber.
You were
because I had it. Like, because to me, this was going to be very straightforward in my eyes. And maybe that's...
It was so needed. I mean, I just look back and I think that was one of the blessings in all of this because you're exactly right. My mind was going in 10 different directions on every single decision. And I want to problem solve immediately. Like, let's solve this problem. And so before getting into that meeting with Thief, I wanted to know what are all the potential options that could come out of this, and let's dialogue through it one more time to make sure we're on the same page. And I just couldn't. I could not get into the zone where I would have handled that meeting the way that it needed to be handled. And you were calm. And I think because you were so assured about this decision, and I couldn't be assured. Honestly, by the time Friday came, I was still questioning all 3 of them. Even though I knew logically they all made sense, I was still so worried about the practice and the impact.
Maybe that's where the what is that saying? Like, what you don't know? Like, because I was so short-sighted, perhaps. Like, I'm like, I don't know, but I don't really have a choice. I'll figure out the aftermath. But right now, this is what's in front of me.
Right.
And I can't keep any of these three on my team. Like, the writing's on the wall. I didn't do it. It is what it is. And I think that's what you and I dialogued about later, too. Which is, again, not norm for me. I guess it is norm for me. Whatever. I think, for me, when I'm like... clear the dust away. What do we have there? What is concrete and what is evidence? And as dentists, as providers, we are scientists. We go based on scientific evidence, and that's what we are trained to do. So to me, I'm like, how much of this is noise? How much of this is feeling and emotion? And how much of it is just basic facts?
Yep.
Fact. For hothead, you are botching up these phone calls, you're putting me at risk, and you got a 1-star call. So I think, like, sure enough, like, now it's, gotten to my ears that she's made comments like, it wasn't fair, nobody told me, and she fired me so she could hire somebody else, and she, like, whatever excuse. Fair enough. Like, who is going to say, even admit to themselves, I suck at my job?
Yeah.
Like, as people, that's not human nature to say, I suck, right? So,
I earned this firing.
Yeah, so she's going to make every excuse under the sun. But to me, the evidence spoke for itself. It wasn't me just discriminating against you or picking on you.
Yeah.
Even to the point of where we could be like, oh, associate, you're being too hard on her phone calls, with the ones you've audited. This was a neutral party saying, you suck, you got a 1-star. I didn't do that, you did that.
Yeah.
Same for underachiever. Like, to me, it just became so basic. And I was like, how do I simplify this? Because there's so many onion layers, and that's where I'm getting my brain clogged. How do I strip this down to the bare bones there? And that's why I think for me now, had I gone into that mode of going, what am I going to do? But I wouldn't let myself go there because I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I have to do this now.
You have to make the decision here and now.
Yeah.
That's right.
And the aftermath is going to be the aftermath, because the aftermath of keeping any one of the three didn't really make sense in the practice. Yeah. Then. Like, it was going to be a lose situation, a lose-lose. And so either way, I'm going to lose. May as well do it the right way and then figure out where I'm left. And so I just, you were like, so what are we going to say? I'm like, I got this. I'll lead it off.
Yeah. And basically we had decided that in that moment, based on her answers, you would decide which way it's going. And that is really how it played out. What I love, though, and what I think is such a powerful takeaway from this, is you've got this employee with some questionable ethics, and we're trying to determine, was there like a willful theft here, a willful dishonesty, or was there confusion? And you and I are both secretly hoping for confusion. And so what you did is, I think one of the big takeaways is there was zero tone in your voice. It was not accusatory. You were not upset. It seemed like at the beginning, because I kept my mouth shut, it seemed like a simple touch base meeting, which was incredibly helpful because her guard was down, right? So she comes in and you're like, hey, I've got a few things to ask you. And you're showing you pointed her to the appointments in question, and you said, hey, look at me now. Can you tell me, like, how do we know? Can you tell me what these notes mean? You pulled up some online appointments. You're like, what do these notes mean? Oh, that's what shows when somebody's scheduled online. And okay, and then what about this one? And you opened up one of the appointments that was in question that we knew had been scheduled online, but it looked like
one that she had altered.
Yeah, one that she had altered. And she was like, oh, yeah. Oh, goodness. I forgot to put my call note on that one. I'll make sure to put my call note there. And then you said, oh, okay, so this is your appointment? And she was like, yeah, that's my appointment. You can tell it's my appointment because of this, this, and this. So she's kind of talking us through. And then you said, well, the only thing is, this is an online appointment. And she was like, no, this is my appointment because it's got my initials there, blah, 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 blah. Well, in the meantime, you're pulling up on your phone the proof from the online company that this appointment had been scheduled online. And you showed her and you're like, no, see, this is an online appointment. And so what's interesting here is as you're asking these very simple, non-tonal questions, basic questions, and I think that's what's key about this. You were non-emotional. It was just questions. Calm. So as you're asking these questions, I'm watching her from the side because I love looking at body language and trying to figure out what people are thinking.
She and I were facing the screen.
Y'all
we're looking at the appointment book on the
together,
screen.
And I'm kind of sitting to the side where I can see her profile, I can see her body language. And so I'm immediately, once you start asking the questions, because at first I was looking at the appointment, and once you said, but this is the online appointment, I like immediately turned to her because I wanted to see what her reaction was. And she started clicking around on the appointments. And one of the things I just told you is that when she was clicking around, her eyes actually weren't moving. Her eyes were just fixed on. So even though she was clicking, she wasn't actually looking at anything. She was just buying time, which I thought was really interesting in the moment. I'm like, either she's thinking, why is she clicking around and not looking? Like anytime we move, like if you try to move a mouse without looking, it's weird, right? And so her eyes are solid, not moving at all. And she wasn't saying anything at first. She just was looking and clicking, not looking. She was staring and clicking, which I thought was really odd behavior. So you took over the mouse and you're like, and let me ask you about this other one. And you pointed out another one of the altered appointments to her. And same thing. She said, no, this is my appointment because of XYZ. This one was very evident again. And so you asked the same question, but we have proof here that this was actually an online appointment. And you waited. And so what's important is no tone, no accusatory feeling. This didn't feel like a super important meeting. It was very calm, cool, collected. But also when you asked the questions, you waited. There was a silence there that was like, what you gonna say? Because I think if you would have continued to ask questions or if you would have made comments, we would have missed the real reaction from her. And once she finally started speaking, so same thing on that appointment, she grabbed the mouse, clicked around, eyes not moving, very solid body language. It was like she was not present, but she was. And then finally she sat down and we both waited for her to speak. And once she was done staring at the screen, she sat down and she said, I can see how this looks. Oh, it was just like a punch in the gut, I think, to both of us. Because what an odd comment to make. And you said, what do you mean? You know how this looks? Because it's an odd comment. And she said, I know, and I can't remember exactly what she said, but I know how it looks bad. I can understand how, and she would never say exactly how it looked, but it looks bad. I can understand why this would be concerning.
And then the next thing she said.
This is where it was like nail in the coffin for me. She said, I understand, Dr. Kuba, you do what you have to do. I understand how this looks, and you do what you have to do.
She goes, you do what you need to do, no hard feelings. And I think, again, looking back at it, I think I was like, the hell? And I think, when we think about it and go, I was silent and all of that. It wasn't me being strategic going, I'm going to let you trap yourself. I was waiting for her to explain to me. Because I was still there hoping that there was an explanation. I guess I'm just half full that way. I don't know. That I'm a feeler. I don't want to feel like I've been deceived. Maybe it was a protective mechanism. I don't know. But again, it's not like I went in going, I'm going to fire you. I'm going to bust you. It really was like, oh, for the love of God, please have some explanation that I have missed and that you can explain to me. So I think that for me was my strategy. It wasn't, I'm not going to say anything. It was really like, I want to give you full opportunity to say something and talk your way through this. Like I think what I was hoping for is when she looked at it, she's like, oh no, this is my appointment. This is this. And I'm like, but here's the proof. And I was hoping she would say, well, that's really weird. Or, oh yes, I remember that. And the reason I changed it was because of this, because then the mom this and the dad that. You're right, I should have made my notes. And so I wanted to make sure I gave her space to talk and that I didn't make an excuse for her and come to her rescue, because me staying silent, I fill the awkward silence. I don't like silence. It makes me very uncomfortable. And so that to me, though, for me was like, for me, I feel like I've learned from you and from everybody else going, shut up, just listen for a minute. But it wasn't a listening for any other reason other than I'm so waiting for her to give me a reason to not, that this was all a weird misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And so then she didn't on that first one. And if we had only had that one and she was like, well, that's weird. I mean, I think even then I could have been coaxed into going, well, I really don't know what happened, did this, whatever. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know either. Well, I got another one. I want to ask you about this. And so I went to that one. And I was like, again, here, maybe this will ring a bell to her as to why she scheduled it this way. And that, again, I wasn't looking at her face because I just couldn't. So I was staring at the screen with her. So I missed all the eye thing you were talking about. But I think for me, I did notice in the second one, because it was like 2 appointments and one was a sibling and one was an add-on and blah, blah, blah. And so she was like clicking between both appointments, just back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, what is she doing? And that makes more sense now. She wasn't really looking at what she was doing. She was clicking. But I was like, maybe she's trying to remember.
Yeah.
I was hoping she was trying to remember why she did this. And at that point, to me, it was evident that she knew she had nothing to say, because now you're busted. Because she knew. I was like, yeah, because here you go. Here's the email on that one that shows that that's an online one. Mm-hmm. And then pause. And then she sat down and she said, well, yeah, I don't know. But I know how this looks. And that for me was that, like you said, the nail, where I was like, how this looks. Like, if you were truly innocent, you wouldn't have jumped to the conclusion that somebody's going to delete an appointment and recreate an appointment to get a bonus. Like, that would be so far-fetched.
That's such a complex thought process.
Yes.
Anyway, to then just be able to immediately know that it looks bad was like, there's the guilt.
Right. And which is why I was like, this looks bad. What exactly looks bad? Why does it look bad? So I just said, well, what looks bad? Well, yeah. And like you said, she never did. She kind of danced around. I don't even remember her answer, but I think that's why, because it was a non-answer.
It was a non-answer.
I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And I was like, well, is it a system glitch? Because I would have thought it could be a glitch, but it's only your patients that it's happened to. And so therefore, that's when it was kind of more like going, I don't know. She's like, I know how it looks, and you do, I no hard feelings. I know, Dr. Kuba,
and
how
she
it looks.
said
You
that
do
a
what
couple
you need to do.
times.
Yeah. And I was just like, well, okay then. I guess good thing that you're not going to sit here and make excuses. You see the writing on the wall. You're not that stupid. And, like, she's not stupid. That was the whole thing of this. She's not a stupid person. So there's several in the office that I'm like, this poor person probably just got confused. She wasn't one of them. Mm-mm. And so that's when I was like, well, I said it to her, right? I think I did. I think I said, I was really hoping you would come in and be able to explain this. That's what I was hoping for. And she really didn't say anything. She's like, yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know. I know how it looks. And I said,
she
okay.
said, that was her. If I could think of one thing she repeated, I know how this looks, and you do what you need to do. I understand.
Right. What am I supposed to do with that then? Like, if I wanted to follow what associate said and give her a reprimand on what? Like, okay, well, you didn't do it, but if you had done it, don't do it again. Like, what am I supposed to say at that point?
Well, and even now saying it, you do what you need to do could be interpreted multiple ways, right? Write me up, or take away my bonus, or reprimand me. It could have easily been interpreted that way, but what's really interesting is after the second or third time she said, I understand, do what you need to do, you said, well, okay, I guess I'll let you get your things, and you can go. And she got up without hesitation and left, and got her things and left peacefully, left calmly. And even that, to me, says she knew the gravity of what it was. She wasn't saying, do what you need to do, reprimanded me. She was saying, do what you need to do. I know this is worthy of firing. And then left without, she wasn't like, oh, are you firing me? Without saying, fire me if you need to. She said, just do what you need to do. You said, okay, well, I guess, go ahead and get your things and I'll let you leave. And she left knowing that she was fired. Just all of it to me, again, looking back, and even in that moment, I was like, well, that was the answer we needed. Crystal, if we were confused going in, we left it going, wow. Guilty, guilty as charged.
Because you and I were still waffling to the end. And there it was just like, well, that thank you for making it easy on us. That there was no, like, where, if she went like a zealot and then you and I are having to, like, analyze. Like, this was clear. And I think she said to my manager on the way out, man, I didn't do anything, but I see how it looks. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to stick to that, huh? But every action spoke otherwise. And anyway, so I guess my manager went and got her uniforms from her and whatever it was. And I guess that girl was like, man, I'm just sad about the situation. And I'm like, what is she sad about? That she got caught? That she did it for $5? Like, what exactly was she sad about? But whatever, neither here nor there. I don't need to know that. Like,
I do think really good takeaways on that is, number one, there were 2 of us in that room, which I always recommend in a termination, by the way. And I know that's hard because some of us don't have big teams to pull people in, but anybody sitting in as a witness is really important in termination meetings.
Which I worry about. Even if I pull in somebody, what kind of gossip are they going to create? Like, even if you tell them not to gossip and all of that, like, what's that going to do? So, but it's still safer to have somebody there.
It's safer. Even just somebody that is within earshot. I had a client that had to let somebody go, and the manager was the one to release the person, and she asked a person who's been on the team for a very long time, very reliable, trustworthy, to just be in the building within earshot. So she wasn't actually sitting in the meeting, but she was overhearing everything. Even that I'm good with. But you and I were both in there, and in this particular situation, it was super helpful because as you're asking the questions, it's really hard for you to also then be analyzing how she's responding. And so it worked out great that I was just silent. I didn't say a word in that meeting, but I was watching the whole time so that as we come away from it, first of all, if anything comes up from an unemployment standpoint or from a she discriminated against me and that's why I got fired. There is a witness in the room that watched the whole thing go down. And, but in this particular case, it was really helpful because now here we are half a week later and we can still look back, compare notes on how that went down. We can reaffirm to each other how odd it was, some of the behaviors and some of the things that she said. So it creates confidence on the back end, especially in a situation like this where you really want to know that you're making the right choice, and hindsight is 2020, but especially when you're sharing that hindsight with somebody. And so I think it was a really good unplanned tag team approach in that meeting, and it worked remarkably well. So I think those are some good takeaways about hard conversations. Ask open-ended questions. See how they respond. Don't talk over the person. Don't add tone to your questions. Just ask open questions and see what they say and go from there. But then also have a counterpart in there, a witness that can watch the whole thing go down. Based on all this, can you think of any parting thoughts or wisdom?
I think the only thing I would say is just hang in there. Like when these clouds are up over your head and you're like, why is it raining on me? I tell you, like, you would have thought I was going into this week in gloom and doom. We've been fine. Now, of course, there are challenges up ahead, but as luck would have it, and again, I'm whatever, it's just happening this way, whether it's karma or Jesus or Muhammad or whoever it is, whatever it is, right? Like, it just is happening that I found not one, but two, Bethany, in this market, in this time, two very knowledgeable, mature people that I've hired. That, I mean, I didn't think I'd even hire one, you know, especially the last time we were talking, and every time we've talked. Like, what is
gloom and doom.
Which, by the way, didn't y'all talk about, wasn't
Danielle.
a couple of weeks ago? Yeah, Danielle. You know how I found these two? Good old Dental Post. Because I did my Dental Post, and you guys were helping me with Indeed. And I knew it was complicated because I was never able to figure it out myself. But I loved that episode with Danielle talking about all the ins and outs. Like, it made me even more be so thankful for you guys for taking that on for your clients that, you know, that you help with. But I think for me, funny enough, both of these two happen to come through Dental Post. And the Indeed ones.
Yeah.
So you just never know.
You
I guess
never
like
know.
cast your net and see what happens. But yeah, I may be being premature because one, I guess she's been there a week now. The other one starts on Monday. And then that too, I'm like, is there going to be drama with all these new people and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure there will be because that seems to be the theme of my office in my life, which is why you chose me to be on your podcast that I'm now seeing. Season 3, it's become evident why you invited me here. So I'm sure there will be. But in the meantime, I still like, I think it goes back to what I've said many an episode. Go with your gut. Go with what you know is right. There are going to be mistakes. There's going to be ups and downs. But I mean, it's looking really up right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to take it. Like a day at a time, I'm going to take it. Because at this time last week, I was in a very different place.
Yeah.
And this week, I've had a good week.
Yeah.
And we've got a plan and we're moving forward. And I feel less heavy. I feel less heavy that I've got this liability of hothead. And I feel less of the liability of the other one that was like a baby pooping all over the office. Like, I didn't know where the next mess was going to pop up. And the relief of the thief gone. I feel light.
Yeah.
So let's bring on the rest of the drama that's going to come. But for now, I feel light, and
I think
very
that's the best
satisfied with our
way
decisions.
to look at that. And I think that's such a good way to wrap up this 3-part series because you're right. Like, even though the decision was incredibly consequential, to know here you are a few days later and it's looking bright. And I think that's such an important message. Like, yes, it can feel gloom and doom in the moment and wow, these are such dramatic decisions. I'm done. I'm just done with dentistry. I'm done being a practice owner. And then look, I mean, just a few days later on the other side of this, you've got some hope. You've got some good things in the works. And so it is ever evolving, ups and downs. And that is what's predictable. There will be ups and there will be downs. And we just got to hang on in the process, you know? And I think that's a really good way to look at it on a few days later past this, that you can say, you know what, these were the right decisions. As hard as they were right decisions.
And the argument could be made, what if these two didn't come along on Dental Post? Then what? Then what am I supposed to do? But it's almost like, kind of like what we've talked about with Delta, like I'm terrified now that I'm going to lose 35% of my patient base. But what I'm trying to hold on to is, okay, but if I cleared those spaces off of my schedule, maybe I've created room for more to come on. And it might be slow, but we'll be okay. And if any of these people tried to come on a week ago, I wouldn't have had a spot for these seemingly amazing women that are joining my team.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had room for them. And I've cleared the way for better for myself, for the rest of the team, and for the ones we had to let go. I was going to say, it's not like they're bad people, but I don't know what to say about thief, right? But there's an office for you. You know, there's going to be an office that's a good fit for you, that's going to appreciate your ability to scam, so you can help them scam insurance, then scam the patients. Good. There's a good fit for you. And for hothead, there's a space for you where that dynamic
attitude is
works.
Needed.
Yes. And underachiever, you're going to make some periodontist super happy because you're going to be so sweet to their patients and you'll be able to handle that load. So, and then you're going to feel better about your job because you know you're not shitting all over the place.
Yeah.
It's like the baby, right? Like you can feel like a big girl now because you're in the right environment. So I really do feel like
win-win.
We've got to do it. It's gonna go up and it's gonna go down, and find you that silver lining.
That's right. That's right. A good way to end this series. Thank you for sharing your drama with us once again.
Somebody else's turn, for the love of God. I want to hear about from another client of yours. It can't keep being me.
Oh, I do have one coming actually. So,
Okay.
There's another cliffhanger.
Okay.
I got Dr. Smith coming, so you guys will hear from him after this 3-part series.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.